Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Please take a moment to click the thumbs up icon if you like our episode, and even if you don't like it, just because we're desperate for approval, please click the subscribe button so that that number goes up as well, and then you'll also be able to find us easily in your YouTube feed. And if you'd like to get a notification, please click the bell icon.
So, if you're new to this channel, each week Todd, Leonard, and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary reading from the Gospels. And our goal is to talk about those readings in the context of love, compassion, societal justice. Our hope is that our conversation will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something we say during our brief conversation back and forth would inspire you alongside with us to do more in our Jesus following than just talking. So, Todd, what's our passage this week?
We continue to be in the book of John. This week we are in John 15, verses 1 through 8.
Yeah, so this is the vine. Jesus is the vine. We're still in the I am statements.
Mm.
John, he's the bread of life, light of the world, good shepherd, resurrection and the life, way, truth, and the life. And then here in John 15 is the last one. He's the true vine.
And you got to
Um,
say, you got to give John, the writers of John, credit, even as Herb and I struggle in many places with the theology behind it. It is a well structured book. It is, there's a lot of intentionality to um, the miracles and where the miracles are placed and how they crescendo with those stories, and then these seven I am statements, harkening back to the I am statement that God made to Moses. There's a lot of rich literary work done in the Gospel of John, and so this falls at the end of those I am statements.
which reminds me too, Tom, that this is not like a historical eyewitness account.
No,
This is an orchestrate, a structuring of a version of the Jesus story in the Johannine community for a very specific, I don't want to say propaganda, but at least for a certain purpose.
right, absolutely,
And it's organized and structured, not necessarily in the way things historically happened. It's
correct.
organized and structured in a way to make a narrative and even theological point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you know
And it does a good job at it.
it does. I would say of the four Gospels, it's the most complex, sophisticated
Mhm.
literary work of the four Gospels.
I'd agree. I'd agree. So there is one thing I do want to say as we begin this week. Um, this I am statement about the vine. There's a lot of talk here about well, here, let me just read certain parts of it. My father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it so that it'll bear even more fruit. He goes on to say, uh, he talks about branches that don't produce fruit are thrown into the fire. You have to be, you can't bear fruit by yourself. Uh, but then it's quantitative in John that
Mm-hmm.
he wants you to bear fruit, and then he wants you to stay connected and go through the pruning so that you bear even more fruit, and you keep producing more fruit and more fruit and more fruit. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a little subtly different from the fruit metaphors in the synoptics.
Mm-hmm.
In John, it's about quantity of fruit. If you it's no fruit, fruit, bear even more fruit, and keep producing more and more fruit. And I think in our capitalistic world today, society today, I think we need to just be careful with statements like that, because we live in a system today where the drive to always be producing more and more, because there's a certain class that profits off of our production, this drive to constantly produce more and more. We belong to an economy that I think is unsustainable. It has to always be growing. There's no pause, there's no rest.
Hmm.
It has to always be, increasing and growing and growing and growing for it to succeed. Um, that has a debilitating effect on us. When we're pushed to always be producing, there's no time to just be. There's no time to rest. There's, and when that gets out of balance, it has effects on our mental health. It has effects on our physical health. I think there's a time to produce, but there's also a time to rest, and there's a time to enjoy recreation, put yourself back together, and your value. We're told today that you're somehow less than if you're not producing as much as others or even more than
Hmm.
others.
Hmm.
And I just want to tell our listeners tonight that it's okay to take a break from producing fruit all the time.
Mm.
You can rest. You can just be. You can
Right.
take moments just to be. That's okay.
Right. Yeah, I have to remember. You have to. Yeah, you can't take, and you could group together passages like this one that are very much on the production side and do more and more and more. You could take the parable of talents and misinterpret that in a way and make that all about capitalistic.
More.
You got to
Yeah.
do more and more and more. And so, and in our, in especially in our social media culture where we're all making posts about all the great things we're doing, all the accomplishments we're having. It all just builds up to this pressure. Oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not experiencing enough. I'm not spiritual enough. I'm not. And you have to remember that God also was the one who created a Sabbath rest every week, and God created a year of jubilee where you don't produce crops, and that there that there was intentional non-productive time
Yeah. I love that.
that God built into things, and so that you have to counterbalance things like this with the other.
Yeah, social media can be brutal sometimes. You know what I mean? There's
Oh
the
yeah.
pressure that my kid's not achieving as high an accomplishment as maybe that person's kid, or look how affluent they are, or I don't go on as many vacations as they do,
Mm.
or look what they're getting to. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Look at their new car. There's all this push to be more and more and more, and it's okay. It's okay just to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So the synoptics, I'm going to take the fruit metaphor though, and I'm going to retreat really quickly to the synoptics because they aren't about quantity. They're
Mm.
about quality. In Matthew 3:10, it's about a tree that produces good fruit, a certain kind of fruit, not an amount of fruit, but it's talking about the nature of the fruit. In Matthew 3, it also talks about producing fruit that's in keeping with repentance, talking about
Mm.
John the Baptist's message. In Matthew 7, we get the metaphor: every good tree bears good fruit, and a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. It's not talking about the amount of fruit, it's talking
Right.
about the nature of the fruit. You
Right.
get that in Luke 6. Matthew 12, it says, make a tree good and its fruit will be good. Make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. So I actually resonate more, and I know it's going to come as a
It's a
shocker to our
shocker.
listeners. But once again, I resonate more with the way the fruit metaphor is used in the synoptics than I do in the qualitative
Hmm.
emphasis rather than the quantitative emphasis that we're getting in this week's reading.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we speak about fruit too. I mean, that's how Jesus, at least in the synoptics, is telling us to judge um, the things in our life, our beliefs, our values, our
Hmm.
ethics. Um, what kind of fruit is it producing? We can do all kinds of textual gymnastics. Jesus never said, to make sure it's biblical, make sure you have this many verses that back up what you believe. You can make almost anything biblical.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? We have to take whatever it is we're believing, whatever it is we're subscribing to, and we have to say, is the fruit that's producing in my life life giving, or is it death dealing? And it doesn't matter how many Bible verses you can quote to support it. If it's death dealing, then you need to reassess whatever it is that, because Jesus said, by its fruit, you'll know it.
Right.
A good tree produces good fruit. A bad tree produces bad fruit. A bad tree can't produce good fruit, and a good tree can't produce bad fruit. So if it's producing bad fruit in your life, that's a bad tree and it needs to be uprooted.
Mm.
It's not about whether it's biblical, it's what are the results.
Right.
I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the litmus test, is what is the fruit that's produced, not can you back it up with scriptures, can you build a theological framework around it, that's it's got, what does it do in people's lives? What is
The,
it what does it accomplish in people's lives, and how does it touch others? How does it expand the circle of the kingdom and things like that?
there are so many different versions of Christianity out there, so many different expressions of the Christian faith tradition, and all of them have a Bible verse to
That's right.
justify, substantiate what makes them different.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I will go so far as to say that not all forms of Christianity out there are producing life giving fruit.
Mm.
There are some expressions of Christianity right now that are just utterly failing at
Mm.
making the world a better place. The world is not better for their existence.
Yeah.
So, again, what's the fruit?
Mm.
Especially here in Appalachia. Here in Appalachia, and again, sorry, I don't mean to get on a soapbox, but we
Really?
have. Shut up, Todd. I don't
Please.
know. I don't know what it's like where you're at, but here in West Virginia, we have multiple forms of Christianity here. We have progressive Christian groups here. We have evangelical groups here. We have fundamentalist groups here. Each one of those produces a different kind of fruit in our society.
Hmm.
And it's alarming because it seems like there's one type of Christianity that is deathly afraid of trans kids right now,
Hmm.
anti-LGBT safety for them,
Hmm.
um, definitely anti-women's health care and women's rights. And that makes sense. I mean, even within those faith communities, women are second class citizens. The leadership roles are reserved for all the men.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't ordain a woman in those traditions.
No.
Or bigotry towards immigrants. The
Right.
Bible says not to mistreat the foreigner. Where's that? What would so it produces this fruit, and then there's other, and I don't want to be unfair. There are exceptions. There are other types of Christianity that seem to be consistently producing the opposite. They want health care for everybody. That sounds like the Jesus story. They want food. They want right now. There's a big push to secure free lunches in our public school district. We have it, but to secure it so it stays
Hmm. Hmm.
free lunches for our kids in our schools, because people know that some of these counties food is scarce, and these families, sometimes the best meal that these kids have is while they're at school that day.
Right.
you know and so and they're concerned about the LGBT community. They're pushing for women to have access to the health care that they need.
Hmm.
Those kinds of Christianity give me hope.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're why I still hold on to Christianity. If the only kind of Christianity, if the only option was the kind of Christianity that's producing that first set of fruit, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with Christianity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that explains where a lot of people are today, is that they just bump into one kind of Christianity that's producing this horrible fruit in our society.
Yeah.
And generations from now they will continue to evaluate that form of Christianity and ask, does Christianity have anything life-giving to offer to society? And right now, the answer seems to be resoundingly in the majority, no.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a good
There.
week to talk about fruit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's where I live now. When we started this YouTube show, I was in Los Angeles, and now I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I think Baton Rouge is more similar to certainly is more similar than LA to your Appalachian experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is there is an expectation here amongst most people that good people go to church, um, and so their churches uh, have do pretty well here as far as people showing up and participating and things like that. Um, but you have you have a certain segment of the churches that are Christian fundamentalists and who are speaking directly against what they understand to be the evils of the world, which is personal sexual preference and gender roles and things like that. But then you have a lot of we have a lot of congregations here who fall into kind of that non-denominational category that that don't talk about social issues very much, or when I talk about social issues about gender roles, about sexuality, about
Abortion.
um, abortion, about death penalty, about violence, militarism, things like that. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about, and they're not Christian. They don't talk Christian nationalism, um, but they just talk um, personal spirituality, personal uh, behavior, family values, and so their music and their preaching is quite generic, um, and it's like a personal motivational experience, and the whole point of being part of that congregation is showing up on Sunday morning and participating in that motivational experience. Um, and that's true in white non-denominational, and then that's true in the black churches. There's a lot of that, and there's even though black churches have a often a strong emphasis, understandably, about racial justice, it doesn't necessarily extend to other areas of of equity issues outside of racial equity, and so there are gaps in the black congregations in our city as well as in the white congregations, and then there's just seems like there's a handful of black and white churches in the area that actually are focused on justice and equity issues across the board, um, and aligning their message with the gospel of Jesus and with uh, uh, a true justice, compassion for everybody. So it down here, there seems to be it's quite limited. Um, the expression of an equitable, just Jesus experience.
I may regret saying this later. I don't know yet. I haven't thought it through all the way. But I think looking at my area as politically active, as harmfully and negatively politically active, the the majority of Christians are here in my little area of West Virginia, here in Appalachia. Um, I think I would prefer it if they, not the progressives, but they would take an inward privatized kind of
Mm.
just have a personal relation and stop talking about because at least they
Mm.
wouldn't be doing societal harm. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I
yeah.
wouldn't want that for the progressives. I love what they're doing societally, the justice things that they're supporting and behind, and the equity issues they're
Mm.
taking on. But I as much as I harp against, We're not supposed to be inwardly focused or heavenly focused. We're about making the world a better place. That's the Jesus story. Those guys that are making the world a worse place, I wish they'd be a little inward focused. I would take that. I would take that.
Sure, sure, and I hear that. I think where I see is I see because people who are in congregations that just seem to take the inward focus, personal relationship with Jesus tact, um, that leaves them free to engage in
Oh,
in the world,
in a way that's not life giving. There's no
whatever
contradiction.
whatever their personal political beliefs are, and
Whatever
they're
their
not.
bigotry is, it's never challenged.
It's not challenged. So that's the problem that I see with that. But I understand it would be great to
Yeah,
have
I
less
regret it
churches.
already. I take it back. I retract everything I just said. You're absolutely right, Todd. I retract.
Yeah, I don't, it's so. I mean, but this is what we're trying to where we're trying to head this week is kind of recognizing that there's a broad range of fruit quality within the Christian tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really, and you said you used the phrase litmus test earlier. I think that really is the litmus test because again, everybody has a Bible verse.
Right.
What is the fruit that it's producing? Is it life-giving or is it death-dealing? Not is this the right interpretation? Is this the wrong interpretation? Is my interpretation, whatever it is it life-giving? And it's okay for you to wake up tomorrow and realize the interpretation you had today maybe not be the best one. There might be an even more life giving interpretation you come to tomorrow. Well, then
Mhm.
you just, let go of the other one and make room for the new one.
Yeah.
But the question is, how can we be the most life giving, the most healing, the most, restorative? How can we set in motion good things in the world?
Yeah.
Um, that's really what we're to be about.
Yeah.
So it's a good week to talk about fruit. There is one verse that I thought about this week too, where in Matthew 21:43, Jesus says, I tell you that the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to people who will produce its fruit.
Hmm.
Now, typically, I've always heard this in the Jewish versus Christian anti Semitic
Right.
lens, that
Right.
way of interpreting it, where
Yeah. It's like a
Jesus
prophecy.
is, yeah, Jesus is warning these Jews that the kingdom's going to be taken away from them and given to the kingdom. That is not the context.
Right.
The context is he's talking to the rich and the elite and the powerful within
Hmm.
Jewish society, rich, elite, powerful, saying if you don't produce the fruit of the kingdom, it'll be taken away from you and given to those that will produce it. And Jesus tells us who those are. He says, Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Hmm.
So it's not taken away from Jews to the Christians. It's being
Right.
taken away from the powerful, the elites, those that are in control, and given to those who are on the margins, who are on the edges, who are on the undersides of society. It's again, the first shall be last, and last shall be fruit first. But again, the point of it is what determines what is whether or not you're going to be producing the fruit of the kingdom
Right.
that'll produce its fruit.
That's right.
That's who it belongs to. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I think that's again, you gotta keep in mind who Jesus is trying to challenge when he says these challenging. I mean, these are judgmental statements that he's making, but it's not rejecting a group of people based on any identity inherent to who they are. It's about how they've chosen to live their lives and have they chosen to benefit
And how they choose to
themselves.
shape society.
That's what it is. That's what it's about. And will they boost themselves up and benefit off the power structure themselves at the expense of other people, or are they willing to undermine systems for the sake of bringing equity to others? That's the question.
Yeah. And
So
that, I
much of
think
the
that,
judgment, if you're looking at the judgment statements of Jesus, you know who he's talking to, and he's talking to the power brokers. That's who he's
mhm.
talking to when he's warning of judgment. That's who he's talking to. He's not talking to a nationality, a religious group, um, uh, a a people who are in certain types of relationships. It's none of that. It is the power brokers.
And having the kingdom taken away and given to someone else, when you look at the overarching definition of the kingdom, and I know it's not current language, problematic language for us today, but that phrase, the kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is talking about making the world a safe, just, compassionate home for everyone. If you're not going to bear the fruit in your life that makes this world a safe place for everyone, well, then whatever status you think you have, that's going to be removed from you and given to those who are making the world a safe place for everyone. And I can't think of a more time in my life where I felt like that was applicable to Christians today. That
Mm-hmm.
Christians, that we're at a crossroads again. Typically, historically, we have found ourselves at crossroads dealing with society, and we have over and over again been on the wrong side of history. Too often been on the wrong side of history. And the only reason that we changed and became more life giving is because of the society outside of our faith communities pressured us to make those changes. If we're not careful, we're going to repeat those same mistakes today, and we're going to find ourselves, and we are right now. There are Christians right now finding themselves utterly opposed and obstructing those outside of Christianity that are seeking to make the world a safe place
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this passage is talking about. It's about producing the fruit of the kingdom, making the world a safe place for all, where there's room for all of us. And as a Christian, we have to ask, am I obstructing that or am I furthering that along? And to become a Christian that furthers it along for some forms of Christianity, I think that's going to take an incredible amount of change and difficult change for those forms. But I think the change will be worth it in the end for them. Otherwise, they'll just continue to experience the mass exodus that they're so scared of right now.
Yeah. I feel like the parable of Jesus is coming true of those who the parable of the servant who says he will do his master's will and doesn't do it versus the one who says he won't do the master's will but ends up doing it. I think what we are seeing is we are seeing non-Christian society showing up
Doing the work of the kingdom. That's
more
right.
for the kingdom
Yeah.
than the people who espouse that they are Jesus followers, and
Yeah.
that is it's a deep irony, and but it is more true than ever.
Yeah. So if we're talking about fruit this week, I think there's a lot here to chew on, especially for where Christianity is right now,
Yep.
politically, socially. There's a lot of fruit to chew on.
Yes, I picked up on it the first time. You did it. You did. That was very good. Well done. Take a bite out of that. So, uh, I think we can wrap things up right there and stick a fork in it. It's done. Okay. Um,
Do you have anything else on this passage, Todd?
I don't. I think we have done well.
All right.
What
Thank you
else do you
guys.
want to talk about?
I'm good this week. I as always, I want to thank all the supporters out there who are supporting the work of Renewed Heart Ministries. I want to encourage you, if you'd like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries work, you can go to renewedheartministries.com and click donate. Finding Jesus, my new book is on Amazon, and it is now out on Audible as well. I don't know if you've caught yet, if you're watching this one first or the other one, but we interviewed Jeff Moon this week, which is the narrator for the Audible version, the audiobook version of the book. Just a great guy, and his reading of the book is excellent. So check that out on Audible. And I think that's it for this week. Social Jesus podcast over at Simplecast Network. You can find that there. And as always, all the resources you could possibly want at renewedheartministries.com. Check those out. And thanks for watching this show. Thanks for listening to Todd and I. And I hope that it inspired you this week to go out and produce good fruit.
All right. Have a good week, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening.